My name is Larry Stiegel, and I'm a sales engineer here at Jamf. Joining us today will be Andrew Perkel, a test engineer at Jamf, and Jürgen Bontangen with Incident IQ. And our session today is Oh, the Things You Can Do, Jamf School and the API. You have the API in Jamf School. You have tasks that need to be done. You have so very little time, and your day has just begun. You could try to do it all by hand, and that would be a sin. You really need to learn about Jamf School and the API and all the powers within. So during our session today, we're going to talk about what is an API. We're going to look at a tool for the API, what role the API has at the service desk, what tools you can custom build, and if you build it, how they will succeed, and how to work with partners in the API. So what is an API? Well, I found this from Peter Gazaroff in the past, and I think it best sums it up. Before I learned software development, API sounded like kind of a beer. Today I use the term so often that recently I tried to order an API at a bar. The bartender's response was to throw a 404, resource not found. So we just need to make sure that today's session we're going to be talking about the API, not an IPA. So what is an API? It's an application program interface, which is a set of routines, protocols, and tools for building software applications. Basically, an API specifies how software components can interact. Additionally, APIs can be used when programming graphical user or GUI components. So what is the API in Jamf School? Well, first and foremost, it may give you the ability to remove some mundane tasks, things you do every single day. This is where you need to think about those elements. And we provide you documentation with our API. It's your Jamf School instance /API/docs. This can also be found through the web interface. When working with the API, you need to concern yourself with something called endpoints. Endpoints are those components within Jamf School that you can retrieve information about. Things like applications, devices, even other elements including user data. All of this can be readily accessed within the API, and certain functions can be performed on them. So let's look at your Jamf School instance and pulling up a device record. There's a lot of information here. Things like a device name, location, serial number, even which members of groups it belongs to. All of this critical information. But what happens when you're working with large amounts of information? Lots and lots of records. Do we really need this formatting? Do we really need these graphics? The answer is probably no. Wouldn't it be great if we could actually access information like this? So how do we get to that source? Well, first we have to activate our API. To do that, we have to create something called an API key. We can activate our API by going into our Jamf School instance under Organization, Settings, and the API. Here, we're going to build something called an API key. When you build your API key, this is what determines what you want your API resource to do. Do you want it to be able to read information from your Jamf School instance? Do you want it to be able to add information, to edit existing information, or to delete information? you can have a number of API keys tied to a number of different resources. So make sure when you're making your API key that you name it appropriately and use the description to give you some hints of what it's going to do. Once you build the API key, the next thing you're going to need is something called a network ID. How do you find your network ID? Well, it's located within your Jamf School instance. We can find it under Devices, Enroll Devices, and within the Mac OS iOS on-device enrollment setting. So now you have your network ID and your API key. The next step is to do some development. And there's a great tool out there that will let you test the information you can get from an API resource. And that tool is Postman, available here. So what does it look like? Well, I've actually pulled up some information through the API from my resource. In this case, I'm looking at device details. Postman allows me to save a number of API endpoints and perform a number of different functions. Here, Postman can deliver it in JSON format. So that way I can identify how and what abilities I want to function within the resource. I can do all sorts of easy operational things within Postman. It's a great place to test out your API access. Once you use Postman, the next thing we can do is we can actually get a code snippet if we wanted to take information and write a script to execute API requests. Postman will actually provide you the code snippet necessary. In this case, it's providing me the curl command that I might want to embed into another resource. Postman has excellent documentation. In their Learning Center portal, I would start with the Getting Started component. So once you've tested out your resources with the API, you've seen the information which it can provide, you've used Postman to make sure it's giving it to you in the correct formatting, the next step is to determine, what do you want to do? Well, we see a lot of organizations leverage the API with their service and support desk. Here, we can actually leverage the API and we can grant functionality with limited access. In other words, we can identify specific tasks we want our service and support staff to do, and we can develop resources that will leverage the API. We don't necessarily have to give our staff complete access to the entire Jamf School console. Why would we want to do this? Cuts down on the risk of damage, unnecessary information deletes, and large-scale problems. Plus, it focuses the staff on the tasks that they need to take care of. One of my friends basically identifies the API as a scalpel versus the JNUC. For example, if you wanted to remotely wipe a device, you could write a resource leveraging the API and it would target only a single device. That way, you're not giving a service or support staff access to the full console and having them make an error. Again, taking the approach of focused on the task at hand. So now we're going to go ahead and show you some of the tools that you could develop in leveraging the API. And I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Andrew Perkle, and he's going to share with you that information. Andrew?
Thanks, Larry. Hi, I'm Andrew, and I'll be talking about some real implementations of the API with apps and scripts. We'll start with a simple example using a Python script to demonstrate some principles of the API and JSON handling. So, why use a Python script? It allows us to automate easy tasks that could otherwise take a lot of clicks. As an example, let's find a way to clear passwords for an entire class. Maybe everybody all forgot their passwords at once. So getting the users and updating them requires a few operations, And to make this easier, each step can be broken down. First, we'll find the required endpoints to know what the implementation will look like. Second, we'll send the request and parse the JSON response. Third, we'll format the output to update the passwords and print the results. So first, we find the required endpoints. We'll use the group's endpoint to find the available groups and their IDs. We'll then use the user's endpoint with a member of query parameter to find the users of the given group. And finally, we'll use the individual user's endpoint to actually update the password. We won't go into too much detail, but the basic requirements for the request are here. The headers are set so we can specify a version. It will default to 1 if no version header is sent, but in some cases, endpoints will require different versions. So I usually send the header anyways, so I don't forget it in other scripts. A request is then sent to get the available groups. Then the response is parsed as JSON and added to a dictionary with the group name as the key and the ID as the value. This allows us to print the dictionary keys, showing human-readable group names instead of the less friendly group ID. A group can then be chosen by user input, and based on the input name, the ID can be found in the dictionary. We then do a quick sanity check to make sure the input group name actually exists in the dictionary. Next, it gets a list of users from the picked group with the user's endpoint and the member of query parameter, and loads the users into an array. From that information, it then loops through the users and sets the password to 1234 and prints output to show the user update request was actually sent. Here's an example of the script output. As the script runs, it prints out the available groups. Once a group is chosen, it loops through the users in the group and updates the password. Next, we'll go through an example of an app that can use the API written in Swift. We'll also talk about managed app configurations and how they can be used to enhance apps within MDM. So I built an app. Custom apps allow setting variables such as the UDID, serial number, or username using managed app configs. They could also run API requests such as updating notes for device records, changing this end user, or wiping the device. Apps also provide tech support or users with a clean, simple interface for running more complex tasks. First, we'll look at the managed app configuration and how it's implemented in Jamf School. App configurations can be enabled from the app's details page. Here we have an in-house app that was previously uploaded and a managed app configuration that has been set. With this enabled, Jamf School will automatically install the managed app configuration after the app has been installed. Note, variables can be used to pass information from Jamf School to the app. In this case, we're passing the device's UDID and the assigned user's username. This is useful since apps don't normally have access to information such as the device UDID, serial number, or other information only available in Jamf School. A list of variables can be found in the Jamf School admin guide, which I've linked in the technical resources that will show at the end of this segment. At its core, in Swift, this is all it takes to read a managed app config. The managed app config dictionary is read in, then individual values can be set from it. It does require some work to make sure the data types are correct, and this isn't a very generalized example, but it does do its job. Next, I'd like to talk briefly about Pipedream. Pipedream is a service that can easily connect APIs. It can receive requests, then trigger workflows based on what is received, including sending further requests. Really, any server that can receive post requests could be used, or the actions we'll set up could be run directly from within the app itself if the functionality was added, but this is an easy example to set up and experiment with. In this case, we'll use Pipedream to trigger an email and send a request to Jamf School's API. First, here's the configuration for the email trigger in Pipedream. It is set to fill in the email with variables from the post request that comes from the app. We won't look at the app's code itself to show how it's sending the request, but a GitHub link to the project will be provided in the technical resources, which again will show at the end of the segment. Here, I've set up an action to run a post request to Jamf School's API in Pipedream. More complex actions with logic could be used, but I've chosen a simple one to demonstrate the functionality. In this case, it's sending a request to refresh device information for a specific device selected by UDID. The UDID is filled in using a variable that's received in the request, and the URL is hard-coded. The authorization with the API key is also provided in the header. Note, any Jamf School API keys, or any API key for that matter, should never be exposed publicly. I've hidden it behind an environment variable in this case, which can only be viewed by my personal account. Next, we'll use the app to run the actions. Here, the app shows a series of questions that were set via a managed app config. And on the backend, it has also received the UDID and username from Jamf School. Once it's filled out and the submit button is pressed, it will send a post request to Pipedream using a URL that was also set via a managed app config. Finally, Pipedream receives the request with the variables filled in. This is a screenshot from the Pipedream inspector, which shows exactly what was in the request. Then, the previously configured actions are triggered. Above is the email with the values filled in, and below the result of the post request to the Jamf School API. As you can see, the variables in the email are now filled in with the UDID hidden since I used a real device. Jamf School is also returning 200 with the message command scheduled, indicating the device information refresh was correctly scheduled and should run shortly. This is essentially the same as the refresh button found on the device details page in the Jamf School UI. So what happened? I didn't show a slide for every individual step, but as a quick summary, first, the app was installed on the device. Then the managed app config was set. The app then collected the user's input and the variables from the managed app config and posted it to an endpoint, which was also set via the managed app config. Next, the API connector, Pipedream in this case, received the request, then sent an email and posted a further request to Jamf School with the received UDID. Finally, the device's information was refreshed in Jamf School. Here are a few links with the promised documentation and useful tutorials for getting started with Swift. And the Python script is also available at the linked gist. Next, I'll hand it back to Larry.
Thanks, Andrew. Just remember that you may get mixed up, of course, as you already know, but with perseverance and a keen mind, your knowledge will most certainly grow. Be sure to smile when you code. You step with care and plan your attack. And remember that life is this great and unbelievable balancing act. Above all things, never forget to be afraid to try. And always remember to ask yourself, why? Will you succeed? I wish I could say so. But if you don't push yourself, you will never grow. So hopefully today we've planted a few seeds with the API, and we're having a few of those elements help you and your organization grow. In the spirit of Steve Jobs, there's one more thing I want to share with you. And the one more thing is this wonderful resource called the Jamf Marketplace. Keep in mind, with Jamf, we talk about the power of and. We want you to be able to take your Jamf resources and connect them to other devices to extend beyond the framework of Jamf, and really improve and empower your users. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Jürgen, and he's going to talk to you about one of these great resources available to you. Jürgen?
Thank you very much for that introduction, Larry, and thanks for having me on. I am very excited about getting the opportunity to talk about the Jamf School API and the deep integration we built on the Instant IQ side to take advantage of the power this API provides. Before I get too carried away about that integration, let me go ahead and introduce myself. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jürgen Montangen, and I'm a development team manager at Instant IQ. And I've been with this company since the start. The team I'm on works a lot with our app infrastructure. At Instant IQ, we use apps to add additional functionality to our core products. And some of these apps function as integrations with third-party systems, one of which is Jamf School, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. So let me start by saying a few things about Instant IQ. Not everyone might have heard about Instant IQ. So let me spend a few minutes to give you a brief overview of who we are and what our platform does. Instant IQ is an Atlanta-based software company targeting K-12 schools with our platform, which is also called Instant IQ. Our goal is to transform K-12 workflows by building tools from the ground up that are tailored specifically to how school districts operate. Each feature of Instant IQ provides powerful capabilities for supporting today's technology-transformed learning environments. Instant IQ ticketing makes it simple for teachers, staff, and students to submit data-rich help requests. In a few clicks, the intuitive ticket wizard guides users through entering a help ticket quickly and easily. IQ Assets keeps detailed records of every learning device. It allows you to assign, manage, and monitor student devices with a toolkit built for large K-12 deployments. So, with that being said, let's now look at how Instant IQ uses Jamf School's MDM data. Instant IQ connects nightly and on demand to download all asset data in Jamf School that your district has, including device assignments, device location, and any custom attributes or auxiliary data points that might be set up in Jamf School. Once this data is downloaded in Instant IQ processes them through the asset import engine, where it will update existing assets or create new ones. Assets that are no longer in Jamf School and that have previously been downloaded in Instant IQ can optionally be deleted if this configuration option is turned on. The import engine, when it processes assets, can be configured to populate specific fields. These fields can then be used to support custom workflows, and custom workflows can be automated by our rules engine. Every asset that goes through import engine is passed on to the rules engine. Rules engine allows a district to create custom actions to be triggered based on the changes that occur to the asset. This can automate workflows and simplify management and tracking. An example of what a rule could do is that when an asset changes owner, Instant IQ could automatically send an email to the new owner asking him or her to approve the district's acceptable use policy. Once an asset has been imported, literally any data associated with that asset can be used to create powerful views where you can get insights about your assets. So, how about a view of all your iPads that are not running the latest version of iOS and that are not checked out to a user? If you included the physical location as an additional column in this view, it could be used as a list telling you which devices are available to be upgraded today, as well as where they are stored. Instant IQ provides integrations with a large number of asset management platforms used in K-12 today. By bringing in data from multiple platforms, Instant IQ provides a uniform and easy-to-use interface to manage all assets, regardless of where they originate from. So, with that being said, let's look at some of the benefits of working with the Jamf School API. The primary benefit of working with the Jamf School API is that data can be kept in sync between the systems. Traditionally, keeping data in sync between systems has been a pain for system administrators. When some users make a change in one system and other users make a change in another system, data will oftentimes come out of sync. With the powerful API that Jamf School provides and the integration we have built on top of that, a change made in either side will be pushed back to the other system if this is configured. So, regardless of the type of change, your data will be up to date on both sides. One primary function InstantIQ serves in school districts is to track and manage device ownership. We have a very powerful check-in and check-out solution that simplifies and speeds up this often painful process. Most districts choose to use InstantIQ for this, and with an asset integration enabled, you can write device ownership and device location back to the source system when ownership changes. This saves valuable time by eliminating double data entry to keep both systems up to date, and avoids user confusion if one system lists an asset as having one owner, while another system lists a different owner for that same asset. With the detailed revision tracking built into InstantIQ, every modification made to an asset or ticket is tracked. The information tracked includes when the change was made, who made the change, and what was changed. This revision log can later be queried and audited to look up past values and review changes. As the Jamf School API is one major source of asset changes in InstantIQ, this feature can be very useful for identifying what asset changes were made by users in InstantIQ versus what changes are coming from Jamf School. Now, let me tell you about another cool way we integrate using the Jamf School API. By using a different part of the API, we have been able to create what we refer to as remote actions in InstantIQ. These represent device operations that Jamf School allows the user to perform remotely on a specific device. A few examples of such operations are restarting a device and wiping all data from a device. By taking advantage of this other part of the Jamf School API, these same operations can be executed from inside InstantIQ. As a result, remote actions can become part of an automated or manual workflow. An example of this is when a support ticket comes into InstantIQ about a lost or stolen iPad. The support engineer working the ticket could wipe the device remotely to prevent sensitive data from being exposed on the stolen device, all from within InstantIQ. In InstantIQ today, we have more than 750,000 Jamf managed assets syncing nightly. By bringing them into InstantIQ, districts can unleash all the powerful features discussed in the previous two slides. This would not have been possible without the powerful API that is built into Jamf School. The depth and reliability of an integration is completely dependent on the features and stability provided by the underlying API, and Jamf School has been one of the best ones we've integrated with. We have hundreds of districts utilizing different integrations with Jamf products, and they are able to set up and manage these completely without any assistance from either of our organizations. What that means is that if you are a Jamf School district today, all this power is available for you to automate and simplify processes in your school district. The API documentation in Jamf School is easy to understand and to access, which made this integration all that much easier to build. So, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Jamf School team for a great API and the documentation to go with it. And Larry and Andrew, thank you for inviting me to come and talk about InstantIQ, the integration we've built on your API, and all the power and flexibility it has unleashed. Thank you all for listening.